The concept of truthfulness in Emet is at the heart of the Jewish experience. Truthfulness is one of the 13 attributes that the Torah tells us is part of the essence of God. The fact is that the Talmud tells us that truthfulness is the seal of God. A seal in the ancient sense, sometimes still contemporary sense, of a proof of authenticity. Tonight we're here to talk about Israel. I must say, to give me an award for supporting Israel seems to me to be like giving me, well, here's what I'll tell you. A friend of mine from college once came home with me and spent a weekend with my family in Stamford, Connecticut. On the way back, he said, you know, your parents are very supportive. I was very impressed by that. He says, as a matter of fact, I have a vision of your childhood that when you came downstairs for breakfast in the morning, your parents gave you a standing ovation. So I feel a little bit like that tonight. To give me an award for my support of the U.S.-Israel relationship it's nothing, to me this is an honor and an opportunity and a responsibility that I have as an American, where Zionism in the best sense of the word began with the founding generation of Americans and continues today to the extraordinarily powerful bipartisan pro-Israel majority in Congress, which is the ultimate guarantor of the U.S.-Israel relationship. And you and Camera helped to make that possible. I've been reading Sir Martin Gilbert's, incidentally, Colonel Kemp, it's an honor to be in your presence, and I hope I don't hurt you by saying that you're my candidate for the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. I've been reading Sir Martin Gilbert's book, Churchill and the Jews, and it's really a story of Churchill, but it's, in its way through Churchill's life, a story of the history of the political movement during the 20th century to recreate the state of Israel. And I am struck by, though a lot of us in this room, I'm sure, feel that the recreation of the state in 1948 was at least divinely inspired. In fact, speaking of Emet, Rabbi Riskin says that God really made two promises to the Jewish people. One was that the Jewish people would be eternal, and the second was that the Jewish people would return to the state of Israel. And in the true spirit of divine truthfulness, both of those promises, thank God, have been kept. And we are a generation blessed to see that happen. Gilbert's book about Churchill, a remarkable documentary, really, a recording of the history of 20th century political action to build an international consensus to create and recognize the modern state of Israel, with people who were willing, like you and Camera, to stand up to half-truths or mistruths and tell the truth that helped to build the consensus that ultimately resulted in the Declaration of Independence in May of 1948, whose 61st anniversary, thank God, thank all friends of Israel, we will celebrate this week. I say this to say that divinely inspired, carried out by extraordinary work by people here on earth, men and women of faith, of determination, of great purpose, some religious, some not so religious. Somebody once said to me, it's evidence of God's sense of humor, that the true founders of the state of Israel were almost all secular. So it is. It's the inclusiveness of the Jewish people and the Jewish story. But what I want to say to you tonight in accepting this honor with great gratitude is that the work that you do to assure the triumph of truth in an age in which the media is extraordinarily powerful is a continuation of the work that was done by the founding generations. Because just as this state was created over a long period of time by extraordinary work, persistence, truth-telling to power by generations who believed in the dream, as Herzl said, if you will it, it is no dream. Today, the modern state of Israel will be sustained because of all of you who support camera, all of you like Josh who write letters to deal with the mistruths and the half-truths. There's a wonderful old Yiddish expression, a half-truth is a whole lie. And we cannot let half-truths, mistruths exist as lies. I want, in addition to saying thank you, to just give you one example of an area in which I think truth will be critically important in the days ahead, in a most consequential area of foreign policy. And to tell you what I'll be privileged to do on Tuesday with a group of my colleagues in the Senate. And this regards the engagement that the administration, the American administration, the Obama administration is beginning with Iran. Secretary of State Clinton said last week that the administration will approach its attempt at engagement with Iran with eyes wide open and under no illusions. I would say tonight that I read that as meaning we will approach the relationship be'emet, in truth. And that's exactly the way it must be done if it's to succeed, if it's not to harm Israel, the Arab countries, or the United States, if it's to work. Such open-eyed realism, such truth requires us to recognize and make clear to the American people and to the world that the Iranian policies that deeply concern us today are not a recent development. They are not the result of an accidental misunderstanding. They are not the reaction to the policies of the previous American administration. On the contrary, the confrontation we now find ourselves in with Iran is the consequence of a persistent pattern of speaking and acting on the part of the Iranian regime over the course of the last 3 decades. That began with the seizure of the American embassy in Tehran in 1979 and continuing right to this day, when Iran is rightfully listed by our State Department as the #1 state sponsor of Islamist terrorism in the world. In other words, the #1 state sponsor of the enemy we are fighting post 9/11 in the global war with Islamist terrorism.